The IRGC is declaring Trump's Iran war gamble a failure, claiming Washington could not break the Islamic Republic through military force, economic pressure, or its media campaign. Tehran says Trump walked into a war trap of his own making. The IRGC claims the US president's threats, blockade, and strikes instead forced Washington to confront Iran's strength at the negotiating table. Iran claims the US and Israel failed to break its resistance. The message from Tehran is that months of strikes have not forced the country into surrender or ended its ability to retaliate. Calling the proposed agreements an American surrender document, the IRGC hails what it describes as Iran's military power and negotiating leverage. The IRGC claims Washington was brought to talks not by diplomacy alone, but by Iran's military strength and its ability to control the terms of escalation around Hormuz. Have Trump's war goals collapsed? Iran says the emerging deal exposes a US defeat, but Washington maintains that its blockade and military pressure remain in force until Tehran agrees to its terms. Iran says its negotiating power has forced the US to face reality, that Tehran will not accept a return to the pre-war status quo in the Strait of Hormuz. Tehran says the media war has failed to hide Washington's setback. The IRGC credits what it calls revolutionary media with exposing the gap between US claims of victory and Iran's version of events on the ground. The IRGC says foreign media have acknowledged Trump's defeat in the war with Iran, a propaganda claim that reflects Tehran's interpretation of the conflict. The IRGC says Washington failed to defeat the Islamic Republic either through war or propaganda, insisting Iran remains capable of setting the conflict's next terms. The Guards claim the recent agreements amount to an American surrender document, framing diplomacy as proof that US pressure failed, a characterization Washington rejects. The statement credits revolutionary media with exposing what Tehran calls US failure and countering Washington's narrative of battlefield success. Tehran says US and Israeli forces did not achieve their stated war objectives, while US officials continue to claim extensive damage to Iran's military capacity. The IRGC says Iran's military strength and negotiating power shaped the agreements now under discussion, especially those concerning the Strait of Hormuz. Iranian officials say the country entered negotiations from a position of strength, insisting that the final decision on war, peace, and Hormuz remains in Tehran's hands. IRGC statement said, and I quote, "World media, acknowledging Washington's failure to defeat the Islamic Republic, are clearly speaking of Trump's defeat and self-created trap in the war against Iran, and are even admitting that the agreements reached were nothing more than an American surrender document in the face of the realities on the ground and Iran's negotiating power." Unquote. Senior Iranian cleric Abdolnabi Musaffafard said Tehran was preparing to increase the range of its missiles to 15,000 kilometers, although he offered no operational details or evidence that such a weapon already exists. Speaking on August 7, Musaffafard said the extended missile range would enable Iran to strike the United States, using the claim to warn Washington that it could face direct consequences of future escalation. Musaffafard added that Iran's existing missile force could already reach Israel, which he described as roughly 2,000 kilometers away, highlighting Tehran's established regional strike capability before claiming a future intercontinental reach. Musaffafard said, and I quote, "We are preparing ourselves so that the American people, too, will see what it is like to be hit by missiles, and understand what it means to be left in blood and destruction." End quote. Musaffafard also said he hoped Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu would be destroyed by Iranian forces, reinforcing the highly confrontational tone of his remarks toward both Israel and the United States. The cleric's statement came as Iran and Oman said they had reached an understanding on coordinates for a shipping route through the Strait of Hormuz, with a joint announcement reportedly in the final drafting stage. The comments also surfaced amid reports that the US had used nearly 80% of its pre-war THAAD interceptor stock, but that figure remains contested by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and should not be treated as confirmed fact. The US military used nearly 80% of its THAAD interceptor stockpile during the Iran conflict, according to a CNN report. Reports also say the United States has expended roughly half of its Patriot missile inventory since the conflict with Iran began. Senior US military commanders are reportedly warning that stockpiles of several key precision munitions have reached dangerously low levels. The THAAD air defense system plays a critical role in intercepting ballistic missiles at high altitudes and protecting strategic military assets. Patriot air defense systems have also been used extensively to intercept Iranian ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and drone attacks throughout the conflict. CNN reported that the US Army has consumed virtually all of its available long-range precision strike missiles during recent operations. Army tactical missile systems, or ATACMS, were among the precision weapons reportedly depleted after months of sustained combat operations. The report also said the Army's newer precision strike missiles, or PRSMs, were heavily consumed during recent military operations. U.S. stockpiles of Tomahawk cruise missiles have also reportedly declined significantly following months of intensive military operations. The Center for Strategic and International Studies estimated the United States possessed approximately 452 THAAD interceptors before the conflict began. CIS also estimated that the United States had roughly 2,200 modern Patriot interceptor missiles before the outbreak of the war. The shrinking missile inventories have raised concerns about America's readiness for potential high-intensity conflict in the Indo-Pacific region. Several Gulf allies have reportedly warned that lower U.S. missile stockpiles could weaken regional defenses against future missile and drone threats. A number of America's regional partners rely heavily on THAAD and Patriot air defense systems to protect critical energy infrastructure. CNN reported that concerns over munitions shortages were discussed before President Trump decided to halt planned military strikes against Iran. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth reportedly received the initial authorization before the planned operation was later placed on hold. On August 4, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth publicly rejected CNN's report and denied claims that the U.S. military is facing a critical weapons shortage. A new report claimed the U.S. has used virtually all of its long-range precision missiles during the war with Iran, raising fresh concerns over America's military stockpiles. The depleted inventory reportedly includes Army tactical missile systems, or ATACMS, along with newer precision strike missiles, according to the Times of Israel. Sources told the report that the prolonged 5-month conflict had sharply reduced U.S. inventories of key long-range precision-guided weapons. The report said the declining missile stockpile has raised concerns about America's readiness to respond to any future large-scale military conflict. Analysts warned that shrinking inventories could weaken U.S. deterrence against major adversaries such as Russia and China if another crisis emerged. One source said U.S. Central Command had replenished part of its inventory by transferring munitions from other regional commands during the conflict. However, the sources declined to reveal how many ATACMS or precision strike missiles the United States still has available in its remaining arsenal.
Upgrade your news experience with the all-new HT app. Download now.